Hello makers and welcome back to the channel. In today's tutorial I'll be showing you how we can make this crochet top, which can be made in absolute any sizes because this pattern will be measurement based. We do have a free pattern if you want to follow that. The link is in the description box below. If you want a PDF version, it's also linked down there together with all the materials. Before we go any further, be sure to like and subscribe if you already haven't, and be sure to ring that notification bell. Without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. So be sure to follow the free written pattern because there were some changes made after I had already recorded the video, because I remembered I made the top longer than I wanted it to be. However, everything else is pretty much the same. So to begin working on our top, you're going to grab your yarn and make that slip knot. Just going to wrap your yarn around your fingers and like that. So this top is made in using a grit stitch, and we're going to be using chaining multiples of 2 plus 1. So you want to make it a chain that's long enough to go from your shoulder to the other shoulder, but making sure that it's in multiples of 2 plus 1. So I'm going to go on chaining, and then I'll let you know how many chains that ended up being for me. Remember, I am making a size small for this tutorial. So I ended up chaining 44 plus 1 to make it 45. So to begin the stitch, we will be working into the back bump. So this is your chain. You just want to turn it upside down so you're seeing the wrong side of the chain. And we're going to be skipping the first 2 stitches. So this one and this one. So into that third one, in the back bump, go ahead and work a double crochet. Double crochet just like that. And now we're going to skip 2 stitches into the third one right there. Sorry, we're going to skip 1 stitch into the second one, place a single crochet, and then into that very same stitch you're going to place a double crochet. And then we'll skip 1 stitch again into that next one, place a single crochet and a double crochet. Skip 1 stitch and repeat that in the next. Single crochet and a double crochet. Skip in the next one, single crochet and a double crochet, just like that. And so far this is what your work should be looking like. So you're going to continue doing this all the way down until the end of the chain. As you're going towards the end of the chain, I will meet you. So you should be left with 2 chains at the end. So into that last chain, we're just going to go in there with a single crochet, and then we're going to chain 1 and turn. In that first chain, that chain 1 is going to act like our first single crochet, so we're going to just place a double crochet into that first stitch to complete that first stitch, and then you're going to allocate your single crochet. You're going to skip that because that's a double crochet, allocate that single crochet and place a single crochet, and into the same stitch a double crochet. Skip the next stitch into that single crochet, place a single crochet and then a double crochet. Skip the next one right into the single crochet and double crochet. I'm going to keep on doing this for the remaining row, and I'll meet you before we end the row so that we can finish the row together. So this is what it should be looking like, and as you can see, that grid stitch is already starting to form. So keep on doing that and leave the last stitch so we can do that together. So now into that last stitch, which is going to be the double crochet that we made, we're just going to place a single crochet in there, just like that. Chain 1 and 10. And now from here on, we're just going to repeat these rows. We chained 1 right there. That means we're placing a double crochet into that first stitch. Just as we did the second row, skipping that stitch into the single crochet and into the same stitch, a double crochet. And as you can see, that beautiful grit stitch pattern is starting to form. So you go on doing this, repeating these 2 rows, single crochet, double crochet, skip a stitch, single crochet and double crochet into the next stitch, and until you have enough length, because this is now, it's not going side to side. This is coming from the shoulder and it's going down. So until it reaches a length where you want it to go. Remember, we are doing a few layers of ruffles at the bottom. So I would suggest until it reaches just around your waist or the belly button, until it reaches where your belly button is. Then you can chain 1 and cut, so that we can start now working on the 2 front portions. So you go on working on this, I'll go on working on mine. And then after, I'll let you know how many rows I did or how many inches I have. Remember, this is a measurement-based pattern. So you go on doing this and I'll meet you right after. So I just finished working the back panel and I have a total of 48 rows, which gives me about 16 and a half or 16.3 inches. Let's just say 16 inches. It gives me 16 inches. So you go on working on your back panel until you have, it covers the area you want it to cover. Make sure you keep the number of rows that ends up being, because we're going to need those rows when we're working the front panel. So I'm going to push the back panel aside. We're now going to start working on the 2 front panels. So make a chain, make a slip knot. And if you remember, we chained 44 for the back panel plus 1, making it 45. Half of 44 is 22, so I'm going to be chaining 25 for the front panels. So go on and make your chain half the number of the back panel, and I'll meet you. So now that I have my chain 25, still working in the back bums, I am going to skip the first 2 stitches and double crochet in the third. Skip 1 stitch, single crochet in the second, just as we did that, just as we worked that front panel. And I'm going to do this for a number of rows until I reach where I want my curve to start for my top. And that's going to be row 31 for me, if you're doing a size small. But otherwise I worked, hold on, let me just get the other front panel I already made. So I worked 10 inches. I worked 10 inches before I started doing the decreasing. It doesn't have to be the same for you. You're just going to lay the back panel on your front. After you lay the back panel on your front, then you're going to decide where you want the arc or the bend to begin in that row, wherever it is. You're just going to mark that row and you're going to work up that many rows, which ended up being 30 rows for me. So from row 31, I started to do the decrease. Yes, started to do the decrease. And I decreased from row 31 up to row 42. It should be 42. And then I did the normal rows, but I'll show you how we decrease. You go and figure out where you want your arc or bending to begin, and then I'll meet you when I get there. So now I have reached row 30, and the row you want to start decreasing, you want to make sure it's going towards, I want the tassel to be at the end so that it's just going to be weaved in when we sew the bodies together. So, but you can decrease whichever way, whichever side you feel, or whichever side meets where you want the decreasing to start. So it's row 30 for me, and I've just already got and started working on it. So I'm going to show you how we decrease. So once you're left with one grit stitch to make, which is going to mean you're left with 3 stitches. Would make a grit stitch here and single crochet here, but then instead of placing a grit stitch in here, you're just going to place a single crochet. So you're going to treat that like the last stitch. Then you turn, chain 1 and turn, and continue, just work as you've been doing. Double crochet in there, skip that stitch, and grit stitch in there, skip the next stitch and a grit stitch in there. So I'm at the end of the row only decreasing on this side. So I'm gonna get to the end of the row, start a new row, so that I can show you one more time how we decrease. So I'm working towards the end of row 32. And then where there should be a grit stitch in there, I'm gonna treat that like my last stitch and just place a single crochet. And that's what it should be looking like. We're gonna be forming these little stairs, and I'm gonna continue to decrease for about 10 rows, or you're gonna decrease for until you see that that's how much you want the little arc to be, and then you're gonna work the rest normal rows to match the back portion. So it's gonna be 10 rows for me, which means it's gonna leave me at 40 rows. That's going to leave me with 8 rows to work, so I'm going to work 8 normal rows. So you go on decreasing, and I'll meet you once I'm done. So after working all the decreasing and normal rows, this is what your work should be looking like. So obviously we don't want our work to have those little bumps, so what we're going to do is go down the line, placing single crochets all the way down here. So you're just going to chain 1. I've already chained my 1, and go on the side with a single crochet, and that side you're just going to place the single crochets where it looks like it makes sense. So after you're done placing single crochets down there, this is what it should look like. And this is what both of your panels should be looking like. So now what we're going to do, we're going to pause the video, because I know you're on your first, so pause the video and make 2, just like I did, and then meet me right back. So now that you've got both panels, I want you to lay them both on top of your work, just like this. And then I want you to identify how wide you want your armhole to be. So let me just lay this like this, so I have the whole thing in frame. I want you to identify how wide you want your armhole to be. I believe this should be enough for me. So now all you're going to do is grab a stitch marker. So grab a stitch marker and stitch the back panel and the front panel together. I counted, and it's 15 stitches from the top going down to here. Just to be sure, you want to grab a measuring tape. So you want to grab a measuring tape and go around your arm and just see if the amount, the space that you've left here, if that's enough for you. So just to be safe, I'm gonna go down a row, like right here. And then you want to do the very same thing for the other side. So I will be closing the shoulder and the sides with a crochet hook, because I did not carry my yarn needles with me. But you can feel free to use your yarn needles, or whichever way you prefer. So all we're doing is closing this side and closing the sides, and we're going to do the very same thing for the other side. So I know there's 8 stitches left at the top, and I will insert my stitch into the 8th so it's nice and even. And I'm just gonna close with single crochets. So after everything, don't worry, we're gonna turn this the other way around. And that's the end. Oops. Now do a chain up of 1, grab some scissors and cut that off. We shall weave that in at the end. And then I'm just going to go on and repeat the same thing for the sides. Just place single crochets and do the same thing for the other side. After you've done that, I'll meet you so that we can place buttonholes on our top, and then we can get started on the bottom ruffles. After you're done connecting the sides and the shoulders, this is what your work should be looking like. So you're now going to determine where you want your buttonholes to be, keeping in mind that this is the wrong way around. We're going to be turning it the other way around. And I've decided I'm going to have my buttonholes on this side, so I've already connected my yarn. What we're going to do is go up with a row of single crochet. Okay, so I'm going to go up this way with a row of single crochets, and let me just place a stitch marker where I want my single crochets to end, which is right here where the arc begins. There we go. And all I'm going to do now is work single crochets. I'm using a 4mm crochet hook. Don't worry about the tails, we're gonna weave those in at the end. So just gonna go in through all the holes with single crochets. And then I'll meet you as I'm coming back down. So I've just laid down where I want my buttons to be. That's going to be my first button. I'm going to have 5 buttons for this top. So as you approach where the button is going to be on the opposite side, all you're going to do is chain 2, skip 2 stitches and proceed. So I've already done the first buttonhole. And now to get to the second buttonhole, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5, 6 stitches. So I'm just going to work 5 single crochets. And there we are. I'm going to chain 2, skip 2, and proceed. Just like that. And you want to make sure the hole is big enough for your button to go in. If your button is going in too easily, you can just chain 1. So let's try just chain of 1 and skipping 1 stitch, skipping a stitch, single crochet into the next, and then you want to try and insert your button again. I think that's better. I think I'm going to continue with the chaining of 1. And then it looks like my buttons are spaced 5 single crochets and then button, 5 single crochets and then a button. And I'm going to try and do that for the remaining chains. So that's 3 buttons now, left with 2. So now this is going to leave me with this area right here, but that's fine because remember this pattern does have a belt. If you have an extra button, that's absolutely fine. You could always make it 6 or so. But as for me, I'm just gonna stop there because I only have 5 buttons of this size. So I've reached the end of the work. I'm gonna do a chain of 1 and go back up. So in those chain 1 spaces, all you're gonna do is place 1 single crochet and off you go up. After you reach up, you're gonna come right back down. Don't cut that yarn because it's now the yarn that we're gonna use to make the little ruffles on the bottom. So you go on doing that and I will meet you. So now that I've done the rows, finished where the buttonholes are gonna be, we're now gonna get started on the ruffles. So I'm gonna go back to my 5mm crochet hook and then we'll chain 2. And then into that same stitch where we chain 2, which we're just going to treat as this hole right here where that chain 2 is coming from, we're going to place a double crochet. We'll chain 2 into the same place we inserted the previous double crochet. We'll place 2 more double crochets. You skip a single crochet row, you come to that one, place 2 double crochets, chain 2, and now place another double crochet and another one, just like that. And now we've got into the sides where we can see stitches properly. So we're gonna skip the first stitch, this one right here, we'll go into that one right there, working 2 double crochets, chaining 2, and then 2 double crochets. We'll skip a stitch, two double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets, and you're gonna do this all the way around your top. Once you reach the end, we're about to start on the second row. I'll meet you so that I can show you how we do that. But so far, this is what it should be looking like. So at the end of the row, all you're gonna do is chain 1 and turn. Into the first 2 stitches, you're just gonna slip stitch. And then slip stitch into the chain space and chain 3. Place 1 double crochet into that chain space and chain 2. Place 2 more double crochets into that chain space. Just like that. And now you're going to skip that and go into that next chain space, chain 2 space. 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets into the next chain 2 space, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets, just like that. Once you get to the end, you're going to do the same thing as we did this side, and you're going to keep on working until you're satisfied with the number of rows for your ruffles. I think I might do 6 rows of ruffles. I'll see how I feel, and then I'll meet you so that we can sew in the button and then make the belt. So after changes, you're just gonna end up with this kind of work if you're doing a size small like I did. And then you're gonna place your buttons, just sew them on as you would an ordinary cloth. And after you're done, you just wanna make a long chain. I made about 140 if I'm not wrong, but you just wanna make a chain that goes around your waist as long as you want, and just make 2 rows of double crochets. And after you're done, cut your chain and weave in all these ends, and your work is all done.